So in my previous video, we talked about how to avoid plagiarism. But if you have already been suspected or accused of plagiarism, then most likely you will need to attend a plagiarism hearing. Such a hearing might also go by the name of academic misconduct hearing, or academic integrity hearing, or exam committee hearing, or assessment board hearing, or whatever names your faculty would use to describe such a hearing. So today, let's talk about what typically happens in such a hearing. And of course, a quick disclaimer here, different universities and different colleges do things a little bit differently. What we're going to talk about here is what generally happens in such a hearing, based on my experiences and the experiences of my friends and colleagues. Everything that I'm presenting in this video is just general information and it should be treated as such. What I'm saying here is certainly not legal advice. So here is what typically happens. In the process of grading students' submitted works, a faculty member, so a teacher or a professor, might develop certain concerns and suspicion that the student may have committed plagiarism. This may be based on the assessor's own judgment or assessment, or perhaps this is the outcome of the plagiarism checking software which we talked about last time. Normally, when there is this suspicion that a student might have committed plagiarism, this faculty member will bring the case to the attention of this committee which deals with academic misconduct. Again, in our university, in the current system, the academics, so the teachers or the professors, typically don't interact or deal with the students directly when they have concerns about plagiarism. Instead, plagiarism concerns are forwarded to the exam committee to be dealt with. And this committee is appointed by the board of the university. Of course, this committee might go by different names: the exam committee, the exam board, academic committee, or academic integrity committee, or names along those lines. And for your information, for the past 5 years, I myself worked in such a committee and we dealt with numerous cases of plagiarism. When processing plagiarism cases, such a committee must follow relevant laws and regulations. And in our case, we follow 3 sets of documents or regulations: the Higher Education Act, our university student charter, and the teaching exam regulations of our own faculty. And according to these legal frameworks and regulations, any student who has been suspected of plagiarism shall have the opportunity to be heard, which is why we invite the student to a hearing. And here is what typically happens in such a hearing. The hearing will normally start with some introductory remarks made by the chairperson. He or she will explain the procedure, the relevant regulations, and basically inform the student what is going to happen. Some of the chairs that I worked with are very friendly, they're almost informal. Others may have been more serious, so all business and no-nonsense types. The attitude of this chairperson would pretty much set the atmosphere of the entire hearing. So after the introduction, the exam committee would first show the student all the documents, all the evidence, and all the relevant information regarding the suspected plagiarism. This may be the printout of the outcome of the plagiarism checking software. It may be the memorandum or the report written by the assessor. It could be the document which appears to be the source document that the student may have allegedly plagiarized. Or it might be any information which is of relevance here. The student is of course given the opportunity to ask for explanations and clarifications or whatever questions that the student might have. So in this first phase of the hearing, the goal is to present everything clearly to the student to make sure that they understand the situation and what the exact allegation is. And when everything is clear and when the student has no further questions, the exam committee would typically at this point ask the student directly, do you admit or deny the allegation? And the student is of course free to either admit or deny the allegation. If they admit, then of course the exam committee is going to record this admission. The student would typically offer some explanations or justifications, any mitigating or extenuating circumstances. And all these things are also recorded. If the student denies the allegation, then of course they can present their defense. Again, these would be excuses, explanations, or justifications. The exam committee would also record everything. In this process, the exam committee might ask further questions, ask for clarifications, and ask for evidence. So during this phase of the hearing, the student might submit additional evidence or documents, such as previous email correspondence between the student and the assessor, or maybe feedback that the assessor gave in the past, or whatever information or documents that the student might deem relevant and useful for the defense. And this process will typically last until when the student has no further information to present and when the exam committee has no further questions to ask. So at this point, the exam committee would close the meeting. The chair will thank the student and inform the student concerning what would happen next. Again, in our system, the exam committee does not make any decisions during the hearing. They would record everything and take all this information back to the next full committee meeting. In the next full exam committee meeting, the exam committee will discuss and analyze the case, usually in relation to previous cases or similar cases. And it is usually in this subsequent full exam committee meeting will the exam committee make their decisions concerning the case. Specifically, whether plagiarism took place, and if so, which kind of plagiarism, because there is a whole list. And finally, what kind of penalty or sanction should be administered. The exam committee would then draft their decision letter. Usually, there is a designated person who makes these official letters. All members will review and approve the letter, and then the letter will be sent out to the student to notify the student of the outcomes of the hearing. So that is the general workflow, at least in our system. And this workflow is not something that is secretive. This general process is often described in student charters and teaching exam regulations or student conduct codes. In fact, I was able to come across a few sample hearings on YouTube when I was preparing the script for my little video here. Obviously, some university exam boards put out these videos to inform their students what would happen in such a hearing. Alright, so in this video I have tried to carefully describe what typically happens in a plagiarism hearing. And I hope this information is helpful to those of you who are going through the process of dealing with plagiarism allegations. And let me emphasize again, different universities and colleges do things a little bit differently. What I talked about in this video is what generally happens. Now, if you wish to know exactly how your university or faculty does these hearings, you should read the regulations and policies of your own faculty. So, did I forget anything? Leave your thoughts and comments down below, and if your comment is a good one, then people will like it and upvote it, then everybody will see it. Now that we have talked about what typically happens in a plagiarism hearing, next time we're going to talk about what students can do in order to best prepare for such a hearing. So, stay tuned. Alright, thank you for watching this Ranywayz random video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.